Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I request the House to please stand silent for a minute and pay homage to the men in uniform who laid their lives in the line of duty and innocent civilians killed by mindless act of terror. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning once again. I, on behalf of FWA, welcome you all, youngsters and veterans, screenwriter of Indian cinema. I am thankful to all the dignitaries who have taken time out from their busy schedules, which includes Mr. Amol Palekar, thank you sir, Dr. Jabbar Patel, Mr. Govind Nailani, and Mr. Rajkumar Bajati of Rashiris. We have invited many great Indian personalities of the cinema, but few of them could not make it because their commitments made prior to our invitation. Today, we have people who have really inspired a generation of screenwriters of India. Dear friends, we all have heard often cliché sentence that the script is the bedrock of cinema or film. But really, the reality has mocked us time and again. Filmmakers openly and frequently bemoan the lack of skilled writers in India. On the other hand, writers constantly accused writer and director of ego-ridden interference and lack of screencraft knowledge. In the light of these pressing questions, Film Writer Association has organized this conference to introspect, deliberate, debate, decide, and take proper actions, appropriate actions to stem out these problems and create better relationship between the producer-director and producer-writer. One thing I would like to share with you, ladies and gentlemen, that this time like-minded working professionals have come to the helm of the FWA affairs, and they are raring to go to take proper steps to create better atmosphere for writers, better ambience for writers, better relationship with the producers and directors. And this conference is a step in that direction. Ladies and gentlemen, as the saying goes, there is a woman behind every successful man. Many may agree with this, but one truth is uncontested, that behind every successful mission there are dedicated people. And in this case, they are the executive committee of the members of Writers Association. And among us, the torchbearer is O. Nanjum Rajabali and his team. May I request Mr. Anjum Ali to come forward and lay down the future course of this conference, what is lying ahead of us, what our programs are, what the debates are, and what are the topics. Anjum Rajabali, over to you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
All of you have a copy of the brochure, so you have a fair idea, and also the barrage of emails that we have been sending out to you repeatedly, reminding you of what this conference really is about. Why is it that it is so imperative that we actually gather together to address issues at both the levels, at the level of our own creativity, the lacuna therein. Where is it that we are falling behind? Why is it that majority of the films produced, especially in Hindi cinema, seem unable to connect with the audience for which they have been written? There are a variety of reasons people give as to why a film actually fails. Budgets, star value, not enough publicity, other events which come in the way. Yes, but accounting for all of that, we can't sort of be blind to the fact that somewhere the way in which we are crafting our stories don't seem to be connecting, generally speaking. On the other hand, we've also been complaining about our professional status, that we feel demoralized and demotivated by the treatment meted out to us, by the position that we occupy in the filmmaking hierarchy, by the complete absence of protection of even basic professional rights of ours like credit, copyright, minimum fees, termination. Arbitrary terminations are done. Yes, that is a fact, there's no doubt about that, and we most certainly and on a very urgent basis collectively need to address that, which also is part of the agenda here. And yet, I think underlying all this is something which I would like to share with you, draw your attention to. I have been a teacher of scriptwriting now for the last 5 years. There are 2 departments running in this country which are exclusively dedicated to teaching scriptwriting to students who may want to learn. Now there's a bit of a misnomer there, of course, because scriptwriting is a creative process and creativity cannot be taught, but it can be learned. You can help people to make less mistakes. You can help people to become more aware of what is it that actually they are trying to say through their screenplay, and maybe expose them and make them familiar with some of the basic tools of writing so that they can use it for their own independent expression. So in that sense, these 2 departments are dedicated to that. I have been teaching at both. I have been a consultant to some corporate companies. I examine a variety of scripts which come to me. At the same time, I conduct workshops. And the point that I'm making through all this sort of self-information is to say that there is a certain familiarity that I do seem to have with the way scripts are being developed in this country, especially by new people, young people, new aspirants. And that's the point I'm trying to make just now, which is that all of us unarguably accept that actually feature films are a medium of telling stories. Yes, who tells the story? The writer does. What is a story? It is a formulation in a certain sequential order of certain events which go up to make an experience that the writer has been able to imagine. And through that he's trying to make a point. The director ingests it, interprets it, uses all his skills, cinematic skills, to bring together a team of talented professionals with a singular aim, which is to enhance the impact of that script on the screen. That's the only purpose of filmmaking. And yet that is not the experience of writers. They don't get the feeling that this is a story which I have crafted into a screenplay after a lot of hard work and a lot of introspection and rewriting. But the process doesn't seem to be governed by that. I'm asking us at the moment for some introspection to see that are we taking an initiative to make sure that it indeed remains a process which is led by the script? Are we being able to craft out independent scripts on our own, on a speculative basis, writing out things which we want to say, and then initiate the process of getting it made into a film? Or are we merely waiting to figure out what is it that the producer really wants? What is it that works? What kind of writing will please who in the filmmaking establishment so that that film can be made? As far as filmmaking is concerned, it's supposed to be that commerce actually follows creativity. Commerce follows the story. That is not what I see around us. Writers write to be able to fit into what they think will meet with the approval of the producer, the star, or whoever it is that calls the shots. Whoever it is that will allow them a contract and maybe make their film. Producers have increased by at least 25% the number of production houses in the last 2.5 years. There's an enormous amount of resources which have been pumped into the film industry. I've dealt with a lot of these producers. Their awareness of the screenplay is extremely questionable, to put it very politely. very questionable, because there is not enough attention paid to the craft. It's not that they are not intelligent people. It is not that they are not sound businessmen. It is not that they do not know how to go about the process in terms of physically putting it together. It is just that the approach is not geared or oriented towards the script. And my observation is that we have happily colluded in that process. We have happily, to use a very harsh word, when asked to bend, a lot of us are very happy to crawl. We keep complaining about the fact that our scripts get tampered with. I don't see much resistance being put up towards that at all. I find new writers, some of my students also, thinking along the lines that no, the audience will not accept this. This is not what runs today. I will not be able to get a contract if I write it in this particular way. Who will make my film? So therefore, the second guessing begins. So let's find out what is running. Let's find out which trends today are considered attractive by the people who pay money to make films. And you tailor your scripts to that in the hope that the film will be made. So where is your independence? Where is your conviction that in fact this is a story-led enterprise like no other enterprise? You want to make toothpaste, you want to make hair cream, you want to make Fair and Lovely. The people find out what is it that the market wants and then tailor the product accordingly. This is not how it goes here. Story is a medium foremost of expression of the writer. And the writer doesn't come from Mars. He doesn't come from some other planet, so he's disconnected with the rest of society. He is also a citizen. He is also a viewer himself. So he is writing intuitively what he believes will actually connect with people. People will be able to understand what he's trying to formulate. It will make sense to a large number of people. But this is rarely what guides the work of new writers. I'm extremely sorry to say this in a very blunt way. But I have no other way of saying it. We don't have that much time. In any case, we began late. Otherwise, I would have given it some huge build-up and set-up and stuff like that. Now, so I'm coming directly to the point. There is no Act 1 here. There's just a straight plot point 1. So, I'm saying that it is important that even at an individual level, people say, as individuals, what can I do? I do not have the position to be able to stand up to a senior director or a star or far less a producer. Who you are the writer. You are the one who knows what you want to say. You are the one who has worked hard to develop the ability to be able to say that. Then why is there no conviction there? I have been a consultant and a moderator in discussions which take place between writers and producers. Even before a criticism comes that way from the producer's side, the writer's quietly laid down his arms. Then, no, yeah, sure, whatever you say. Yes, there are production imperatives that we have to keep in mind. I'm not denying that at all. There might be budgetary imperatives. There might be that, okay, if a certain star is confirmed, you might have to recharacterize your protagonist to be able to do that. Yeah, sure, I understand that. That's all craft issue. That's not a story issue. So, why is this happening? There was a preface I was reading yesterday night, and something clicked into my mind. It's the preface of a book which has been written but until now unpublished, on the whole notion of the market. It's written by an extremely dear friend of mine who is a scholar in this matter. She's sitting right there, Rajni Bakshi. Her book will be out soon. And there in the preface I was trying to see how she is trying to define the word market. And market doesn't necessarily have, if I understand her right, in this case, a physical sort of presence. It doesn't have physical sort of shapes and contours. That okay, the market means this is what the producer said, this is what the financier is going to say, this is how the distributor is going to object. The market today is something which is an entity which we have introjected. All of us feel that we need to be governed by market considerations because that is how it naturally operates. It doesn't operate like that. It needn't operate like that. At the first conference that we had, one of our students sort of wanted to ask Javed Saab a question. Javed Akhtar, he's not here today, he'll be here tomorrow with us. And he sort of fumbled and eventually ended up asking a question which sounded rather inane, which it wasn't. He said, Javed Saab, what is your definition of good cinema? And the crowd kind of roared with laughter, saying, what sort of a question is this? How can one possibly answer this question in a succinct way? And Javed Saab, partly in jest, turned around and said, good cinema wo hai, jiski ticket black mein bikti hai. Javed Saab is very good with words and is an extremely insightful person. I mean, he knows the film industry like none of us do. And yet Javed Saab was somewhere reflecting a certain dominant trend, which I feel the time has come for us to question that. Nobody denies viability at all. Nobody says that the producer like Mr. Ramesh Sharma sitting here, I mean, yes, of course, he's passionate about making films, but at the same time, he is a businessman. So he has to know that if I'm spending this amount of money on this, I should at least be able to recover that. But what is beginning to happen is that producers are getting short-sighted. They say, no, I cannot take a risk. And storytelling is a risky business. You have to be able to have the conviction that, yes, this story is likely to connect with the audience, and you take your chances, as long as it is told well. It's a good story which has been told well. So from the producer's side, the considerations, the whole bandwidth within which they are accepting ideas is beginning to narrow down. And it's being overridingly determined by a singular consideration that will I be able to recover my money, or will I at least be able to make money on this one? And they want a guarantee of that. They want the money on the table before the film is released. This is not how it used to be. On the other hand, writers seem to have quite naturally adopted this position themselves, that this is how it works. This is the dominant reality. This is the nature of filmmaking today, so who are we to question it? And then we sit and we complain that, oh, it's not a story-led industry any longer. Nobody gives, critical importance or determining importance to the story. But how will they? They are not storytellers. You are storytellers. If you don't take that position, if you do not have that conviction, it doesn't carry through. The ideas which I receive, and I read in the region of, I think about 50 to 60 scripts a year, and full scripts. I think at least one a week. Apart from the numerous other ideas, and this is not counting the students. I mean, there are 24 of them. So you add that, I'm talking about a sample of 85 scripts a year. And this trend is beginning to increase. Unfortunately, young people are getting overly conscious and inhibited by this overwhelming notion of the market. And they seem to have ingested it themselves. So it doesn't become that there is any kind of a debate or any kind of a struggle between two people, because we are very happy to kowtow, because we feel helpless, which is true. Absolutely. Individuals feel helpless. New writers have been thrown to the wolves, literally. There's a jungle raj out there of exploitation. I've seen corporate contracts. Corporate contracts, people who are supposed to be much more aware of these things. They are intelligent people. They have not come from some kirana shop or some, black money or some construction business. They are here because they have run successful businesses for decades together. They understand. And yet, I have seen contracts which don't even specify the credit that the writer is supposed to get. Forget guaranteeing it. They don't even specify the credit. They say that the credit will be left to the discretion of the producer at the end of the film. So that is when they will decide. So yes, it is a jungle raj out there. The monies being paid to us are really humiliating. Barring a few of us A-list writers and some other superstars who are there, which is barely in the region of 5%. Most people can barely get out of the 2 to 3 lakh, 5 lakh bracket, which is ridiculous. So yes, it is there, and for that it is important that we all get together under the banner of this Film Writers Association, which is the only union that we have, and have a collective bargaining power based on certain initiatives which the union has already taken, which will be discussed extensively here. But this is just an objective condition. The subjective condition without which change cannot come about is yours. How keen are you to develop new ideas? How keen and confident and convinced are you that yes, this idea actually can carry? How keen are you to actually pay attention to the craft? How many of us really pay attention to the craft and develop the ability to be able to work out a convincing, competent, engaging screenplay? I don't think enough effort is going from our side into this at all. At all. There are several, we're going through troubled times, extremely troubled times. There is total bewilderment in Bombay today. We cannot even begin to assimilate the implications of what really happened on 26th of December. Now that's not the first one. We've had carnages all over the place. Inhuman carnage is taking place. There's tremendous turbulence and upheaval going on in our society today. I don't find any response from us to that at all. I don't find people trying to, as citizens, relate to that, be moved by that, be sort of hurt by that, anguished by that, and see whether we can express ourselves in the form of stories. No. I'm not saying everyone has to become a writer of political films, but I'm saying surely we have a certain reaction to that. Surely we are touched by that. How is it that we craft our stories? Stories are channelized because of our experiences. Why is it that all these experiences are systematically jettisoned? Because they may not sell. Because the producers don't want this. They said, don't give me this grim, serious, intense intellectual fare. I'm not here to make political films. I'm here to make fun films. So the whole notion of entertainment is being defined by what is fun. Like a picnic. Every film has to be a picnic. It has to be a feel-good experience. That is not entertainment. Entertainment is the ability to engage the attention of the audience for 2 hours. No matter how. No matter whether it's a tragedy or it raises disturbing questions, yes. But we don't seem to have the guts to go down that way. It's no coincidence that this year's conference is dedicated to the memory of Mr. Vijay Tendulkar. Because there was a living example of a man who in those times when Salim Javed were going great guns, and one super hit after the other was coming out in the mid-70s and the late 70s. And parallelly Mr. Tendulkar was continuing his struggle of crafting out screenplays which were equally comparable in quality if not better, and being able to make a mark. Ardha Satya, Akrosh, Manthan, the list is endless. Those filmmakers are here. And we hope to be able to get some insight and inspiration about this colossus who stood tall at that time and said, this is what I am touched by. And I am a writer. I am not a political activist, though he was too, but he could not take a jhanda and go out on the street each time. But this is my means of expression. I don't find that coming into our films at all. When you do have political films, which in fact has been a breakthrough, and Kamlesh I'm sure will talk to us about his experience of crafting Rang De Basanti. Plus Rakesh Mehra is going to come, they will talk about that. Anurag will come, he will talk about his films, political films. Janu Barua, Prakash Jha, who has sort of consistently been able to tackle political subjects in a political way in his film. So we will most certainly listen to them. But I am also asking that even when we take up sometimes the whole issue of politics, again, while the problem that we are tackling is most certainly real, it's alive, people relate to that, and yet eventually it has to cater to the feel-good factor. You seem to be sort of almost compelled to succumb to fulfill the knee-jerk anxieties of the audience, how you perceive that. So you have vigilantism, you have direct action, which has disturbing political implications, but that is not the point. The point is that the audience at that stage is going to clap because it fulfills their anxiety. That, yeah, this is what we want. Shoot the corrupt politicians. Kill all the terrorists. And justice be damned. So we take up these issues, but are we willing to go the distance and examine the disturbing implications of what is happening? Do we even have the inclination to really stay with these issues, research them? I don't find that happening. Yes, of course, I completely agree that we need to improve our professional lot, and we are working like hell. Believe you me, we're really working very hard to make sure that it is systematically done, and all those plans will be announced to you, certainly. But this, we have no control on. This is an individual matter. This is where each one's individual conviction comes into the picture. when you're faced with a producer, when you're faced with a star, and you're faced with what you call undue interference from that side, are you able to, do you even reach the stage of that combat? This is a matter of some dismay, and I apologize for being blunt and harsh, but this is heartfelt. So I think it is time to sort of do some introspection along those lines and see if filmmaking, which is a storytelling process, can again come back, the initiative can come back into the hands of the storyteller. You have Kundan Shah sitting here, a source of enormous inspiration to so many of us. Like him, there are several others who keep setting precedents because they believe in their conviction that I will do it in this way even if it takes me 3 years. Rakesh Mehra, who's one of the most successful and sought after directors today, when we were having a conversation just 2 days ago about this conference and about writing and the state of the profession, blah, blah, he said there should be a rule. He was so intense about it. He said there should be a rule that nobody should be allowed to make a film unless they have actually lived with that script for 5 years. I said, yeah, well, obviously you can't sort of impose rules on people and things like that. But it says something. He's making a point. He receives also dozens of scripts. His disappointment is quite plain. So without in any way trying to discourage the efforts of new people, I am saying that this is an extremely serious business, script writing. It requires a focused, blinkered application at the expense of everything else. It is an art form. We have to treat ourselves like artists and be unafraid to take a torch and shine it into some dark corners which are disturbing, which is what writers do. By doing that and bringing it out in the form of a story and a film, you actually are enriching people's lives by making them revisit that situation. And the confidence and the conviction that everybody has a story, every situation has a story. You just need to be able to feel for it. And equally important, to really take time and effort to understand the craft of writing. To understand that there are underlying principles which make a story work. There's no formula. We're not talking Sitfield or Robert McKee here at all. At all. But yes, we can look at good literature and learn something from that. So I'm talking about this double effort. I'm talking about the ability to think up ideas which you suspect may not work or that doesn't seem to be the trend. You set the trend. And the other is that because it is an uphill task, since you're coming out with an unusual idea, you need to have a bloody good ability to be able to craft out an engaging script which even the producer feels, yes, there is some merit there. I didn't mean to ramble, but I did end up rambling a bit, so I'm sorry about that. So just since we ran out of time, this is a truncated sort of address of mine, but I want us to consistently through this conference revisit these two things. That is what I would like us to also discuss in the context of the other topics that we do take up. The topics I don't need to go over because you have the brochure with you. Okay, what we're expecting is some vigorous participation here. Yes? Each session is designed roughly on an average of 1.5 hours, where for 1 hour the discussion will be on the stage amongst the speakers here, moderated by the chairperson. And for half an hour, we want participation with the audience. So, looking forward to a really invigorating debate. And maybe at the end of it, we might put our heads together and come out with certain sort of initiatives that which we need to take collectively, led by the union, and see how we can change our lot and make filmmaking and script writing a much more dignified, much more enjoyable process. So once again, thank you very much for joining us. I need to call upon Mr. Subhash Jetli, who's the treasurer, and he will give you an update of what happened between the last conference and now, because certain cries and calls went up in the previous conference where people were really anguished and wanted certain things done. Well, have they been done? Have certain moves begun? So Mr. Jetli will update you and give you a report on behalf of the Film Writers Association about that. And after Mr. Jetli's speech, then we'll break for a cup of coffee, and then once we come back, the other discussion proceedings can begin. Mr. Jetli.
Friends, you are all aware that the Film Writer Association is a trade union body. It was formed with the explicit aim of safeguarding the rights and the privileges of the film writers. At the previous conference, there was a misconception. For majority of writers felt that the association was inactive in protecting writers. Most writers felt helpless about the functioning of the association, without even knowing what the association stands for. Younger working professional writers wanted to form another association, but were advised by some of the then existing executive member not to do so. It was explained to them that the association was a democratic body and persons not happy with its functioning should contest the election and bring in necessary changes, thereby changing the image of the association. In response to that, the progressive group was formed, and after an energetic campaign, this group won the elections and entered the executive committee. The first initiative undertaken was to formulate a model contract which would govern the writer's relationship with the producers. Given that this is an arduous and complex process, it took several months of meetings with major senior writers involved to arrive at a draft model contract. I am happy to announce that it is ready to be presented and discussed here. Likewise, model contract for lyricists and TV writers are underway. Intensive discussions are taking place to finalize that, and in a few weeks we should be able to finalize that too. One problem raised by the previous gathering was that the writers were degraded in the public eye because they were given an insignificant place during film awards presentations. The association decided to protest. A letter signed by nearly 150 prominent writers, directors, producers was sent to award function organizers threatening to boycott these functions if writers were not included in the popular award category and given awards after the Best Supporting Actor announcement. I am happy to report to you that Star Screen Awards as well as Filmfare Awards duly complied and changed their program in keeping with our request. Likewise, new writers have asked us to initiate some development events for them to learn the writing craft, upgrade their skills and develop their knowledge about writing. In response to that, we have planned several workshops, seminars and other events for all of you in 2009. The announcement for these will be made in the last session by the Executive Committee. In summation, I would like to remind you that the overriding emphasis from all of you has been to make your union, the Film Writers Association, more proactive, dynamic for writers' rights, and also more accessible to members. We have attempted to do just that. Not only is the conference a step in that process, but the office of your union too is open to you to visit at any time with your suggestions. This interaction of the young and old is the new premises on which the association will be functioning in future. Long live Film Writers Association. Thank you.
Let's have a quick break for coffee and let's come back in 20 minutes. Okay, the session is on Vijay Tendulkar, the man, the writer and his work. This session is being conducted on the stage by Mr. Govind Nihalani, a well-known writer, director, producer, and he has worked with Tendulkar. He's known Tendulkar extensively and worked with him. Two films which clearly stand out are, of course, Akrosh and Ardha Satya. So I invite Mr. Govind Nihalani onto the stage. Govind, please. another eminent personality, my good friend Dr. Jabbar Patel, who has worked with Mr. Tendulkar in theatre as well as in film, and known him as a personal friend and colleague. Jabbar, please. The third panelist is Mr. Amol Palekar. Hardly needs an introduction. His film Aakriyat was written by Mr. Vijay Tendulkar. Then we have our FWA Vice President, Mr. Imtiaz Hussain, who has also, as a student, he has known Mr. Tendulkar and has also adapted 2 of his plays into Hindi and written and directed them, adapted and directed them. Mr. Imtiaz Hussain, who also knew Mr. Tendulkar as a mentor and a senior friend. And in the position of the observer, I just need to explain this a little bit for half a sentence, that the observer position is, really speaking, a very special sort of, and very unique position here, whereby while the other people are obligated to make presentations, the observer need not. He can intervene at any time that he wants in the debate. Okay, so he occupies, with the permission of the chair, an extra constitutional authority, and no one else but Mr. Hariharan can occupy that for this particular session. Hariharan is also the Dean of the Prasad Academy in the South, and it's sort of, it's doing an enormous amount of good work. A lot of students learning under him. So, just a word of caution. Govind, we are running out of time in the sense that we have overshot the time, and my wife reminds me that I am partly responsible for that with my rambling keynote address. I'm sorry about that. I thought it was rather compact, but now, Govind, it's important to keep the session compact, and yes, there will be, in this session, there will be 15 minutes of interaction with the public. I really, really request you to keep your questions pertinent and crisp and to the point here. Otherwise, Govind will just refuse to let any of his panelists answer them, so there's no point you asking it then. So might as well sort of formulate it well, okay, and let's give everyone a chance, please. Govind, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anjum. Friends, my panelists have already been introduced to you, so we won't go into that once again. This session is dedicated to Mr. Vijay Tendulkar, because it is felt that he is one person at a time when Salim and Javed were creating waves in mainstream Hindi cinema, not only in terms of giving excellent scripts which resulted into very popular films, but also restoring a semblance of some kind of a importance and significance to the role of the writer in Hindi cinema. At the same time, it is during that period that Mr. Tendulkar emerged on the scene. What was so important about Tendulkar that we are giving him so much significance today? What is it that he brought to script writing that nobody seems to have done earlier? Did he create any scripts which in terms of craft were outstanding, or they broke new grounds? If you look at them objectively, hardly. Then what is it that makes him unique? Look at his background. He comes from a family who was socially conscious. As a young person, he participated in Quit India movement. He got involved into social work, became a journalist. His ear was to the ground. He became a keen observer of human nature, of events, of the connection between the circumstances under which the society was struggling at that time, maybe political, social, cultural currents that were happening. He was the person who was very, very familiar and had roots in traditional Marathi theatre. Then he also familiarized himself with the modern theatre generally, not just Indian modern theatre, but also the world modern theatre. He was very well aware of the work that was being done. He started writing plays and then came to writing scripts. His first script was for a film which was based on his play Shantata Kod Chalu Hai, directed by Satyadev Dubey, and I also happened to be the co-producer and the cameraman on that film. And that's how I came very close to him and got the opportunity to know how he thought and approached the work of script writing. But above all, I think what he brought to script writing or to cinema was a very unique vision of his own. And what I mean by vision is the way he individually perceived the relationship between an individual and the, for want of a better word, the system, the politics, the traditional values, and the important thing that always became the center of his work, whether cinema or theatre, was an oppressed individual's struggle against the forces that were oppressing him and arriving at a state of freedom. His effort to free himself from the oppression was a very, very important theme of his work. And in the process also came the theme of violence, which you can see in many of his theatre plays, but also in scripts that he wrote. But one thing about that treatment of violence was that violence was never treated in a sensational manner, never treated to create a sensational item in the whole narrative structure. You see Tendulkar's violence and you feel tremendous amount of repugnance against it. Because the depiction of violence in cinema essentially reflects directors or filmmakers and writers' attitude to the violence. If the writer and the filmmaker, the director, are looking at the violence as an item of sensation, as an item of entertainment, then you see the treatment of the violence also like that. You create the balletic movements in slow motion and people dying, bullets hitting and blood oozing out. But you can also treat the violence in its true form, which is an aggression against another person. And that is not a very happy situation. So Tendulkar brought his unique vision to the themes that he created. On the basis of my interaction with him, I always felt that Tendulkar started everything from the character. For him, character was the starting point. Character was the action. Character was the initiator of action. Character was the message. Everything started with the character. And the plot developed around that character to make a certain point. And the other important thing was the character was not conceived in isolation. For Tendulkar, the character was conceived as a product of a certain environment and what he was trying to achieve. There was always a theme, what we describe as theme, which generally can be said, after all, what do you want to say? What is that the film wants to say? What is the message of the film? But it was not in terms of message, but in terms of what is it that, what is the attitude and what is your point of view that you want to project through this character in a particular film. Now, we all know that Hindi film script, if there is anything like, unique Hindi or Indian script, and with my interaction with several directors from mainstream cinema as otherwise, the Indian film script has one core element that distinguishes it from generally other screenwriting, which is one word: emotion. Every writer, every director tries to achieve in his film and develop an emotional core. And that is the only way it is felt that you can connect with the audience. Whether it's in terms of relationships between brother and sister, between two lovers, between son and father, between daughter and mother, daughter and father, or whatever it is always based on exploring that emotion. And Tendulkar was very, very aware of that. We had several discussions on films that were being released there and generally how the approach is and how one can be different. What Tendulkar brought to it was the shades, the grey shades and the complexity of that emotional relationship. What we call emotion, he went beyond just the sweet part of it, the intense part of it, but also went into the negative sides of it. He brought in shades of violence in characters where you don't expect them to have it. He brought in certain levels of greyness and blackness in the characters and in relationships, which otherwise in the mainstream cinema will never be allowed, because that will spoil the emotional purity of a particular script. So he brought in his unique observation of human nature. He brought in his own convictions in terms of politics, particularly politics and the relationship between the politics and the individual. This is something that made him very, very unique. As a scriptwriter, of course, he was very, very precise. His dialogue has always been very outstanding, not a single word more than what is necessary. In fact, his dialogue was a testimony to what the famous playwright Pirandello said. He defining the dialogue, Pirandello said, dialogue is spoken action. And that is something, I don't know whether Tendulkar read it or not read it, but by instinct, he was a person given to tremendous precision, and that he brought not to the dialogue alone, but to the depiction of characters, structuring of the script, and he moved from his instinct as to what he wanted to see next. I don't think he read any books on script writing. He went by his instinct, by his experience as a playwright. And therefore, more than anything else, I would say his craft was very precise, but his vision is what gave his script a uniqueness. And I know several cases he refused to work with some filmmakers because he felt that there was no connect between his ideas and the filmmaker's ideas. Most of his films were made from his works also. And unless the filmmaker shared that vision, discussed it openly, and arrived at an agreement, he will never work with anybody. And that's what made him very unique, and he produced some of the most outstanding works on which very, very important films were made, which also connected with the audience. Having said that, I will now invite Mr. Amol Palekar to share his experiences with Tendulkar.
My experiences with Mr. Vijay Tendulkar, while talking about it, I must admit that amongst the panel here, I am the person who has worked the least with Tendulkar, and being the junior most in that sense, I think it's appropriate that I start, because Govind has worked extensively with Tendulkar. Jabbar has worked for a very long period in both in theatre as well as in films. I made only one film, that was Akrit, my debut film. It's the entire journey of how Akrit was made was very interesting, and I would like to share that with you. Tendulkar was already an established star in theatre and also in films when I approached him to write a script for me. I had a story in mind which was not by Tendulkar, which was by some other writer, also a very well-known writer in Marathi, Arvind Gokhale. And I wanted to make a film on that. So I approached Tendulkar. We had a discussion. He had known that story, and he also liked that story, and he said, yes, something nice, very exciting can be made on this story. So that was the starting point. Our relationship as two professionals was a little apprehensive at that moment, because I had always felt that Tendulkar is, as a writer, particularly as a playwright, is little too domineering and little too extra emphatic about his every word. When I say emphatic, in fact I used to have a debate with him, particularly about his stage instructions. His dialogue were fantastic, as Govind mentioned, but I felt that sometimes his stage instructions into bracket also were very extensive and maybe too binding on a director. And we used to debate on that. So the debate used to go on, and we had two different positions on that. How much of a freedom does a director be given, and where does being how do you define being faithful and honest to a script, and where do you go away from it, etc., etc. All those discussions were on. On this background, when we started working, I found Tendulkar to be an extremely pleasant and extremely well-disciplined professional to work with. In spite of his seniority, we worked out a kind of a schedule, and he would come to my place every day morning at 10 sharp, and he would work on a script almost like going to an office till 6 in the evening, with a little break for lunch in between. Otherwise he would sit there. In between, if he was stuck, he would call me, we would discuss, then he would go further. This is how the script developed, and he wrote the script. At the end of it, the script was read. I wasn't happy about the script, so there was a discussion. He said okay. He took down his points, whichever I had not liked, and he said, give me some more time. Then he again prepared a second draft. And all this went on very nicely, very beautifully, till ultimately a stage came where I didn't like the script, and I continued not liking what was there. And he, having tried his best, he said that, Amol, now I have come to a stage where I feel that I am at a dead end. I can't go any further. So I said, okay, we'll just leave it at that. He was very disturbed with this. I must also mention that whatever was the remuneration discussed and agreed upon, I paid him that remuneration, and he was a little reluctant to take that. He said, no, but you haven't liked the script. I said, no, I haven't liked the script is besides the point, but you have worked on it, you have given your time, you have given everything that you can, so there is no reason why this should be embarrassing. You must have this. He was still reluctant, and then he said that I have another script which I have written independently. Would you like to have a look at that? And I said, yes, I would love to read that. So he gave me a script. That was Akrit. He gave me that script. I read that. I loved that script. In fact, that was the script, one can say, that what Govind mentioned about Tendulkar and his perception of violence. In fact, Tendulkar was doing a lot of research and study for his Baba Fellowship, and his main focus was on violence. Violence in our society or violence in a human being. Akrit was one of the first early expressions of that journey, as I can see that. That was based on a true story which had shaken up entire Maharashtra, the Manwat murders. And what was remarkable about that script was that though it was about mass murders and superstition and all those issues, the film wasn't, or the script wasn't sensational in any way. Having taken a subject which was sensational, having taken a subject which had rocked our society so much, there was a perception which had filtered down to the root and to the inner violence, and which fascinated me. We had a little discussion. I had a few points which he immediately said that let him address that, and he worked, he rewrote some of the scenes and he gave them to me, and that's how I started making Akrit. Before I went on the location, I remember our meeting very clearly. I had said that Tendulkar, you are it is known that you are not very comfortable or you are not very happy with most of your directors because they make some changes in your script, and you are also known to make it known that how unhappy you are. That this is, I didn't like this in that film, or this is not mine, these kind of things. So I said, at the end of this film, I don't want to have that kind of a situation, so how do we resolve that? Either you come on the location so that if at all there is any change required, even a minute change in dialogue or in a scene, then you can help me with that. Or then I must be allowed to make that change. He looked at me and in his very typical understated way, he smiled and he said, you go and make the changes. I did make a major change in that script on location. The end of the film, was not what he had written or not what we had discussed earlier. And during those days it was also not very easy to communicate. There were no mobiles and there were no easy connections, and my location was in a very remote place, so there was no way that I could discuss anything with him. So I changed the ending of that script. After seeing that, he was not very happy with that ending, and he said that what was written earlier was better, I think. I told him why I had made the change, and he listened to me very patiently, and he said, yes, I can see your point of view, and I respect that. I can see where and how you are leading to that. But still I don't like it. I said, okay. He said, no, but we had also initially agreed that you had given me the offer to be there. So, though I haven't liked it, I will not let others know that I have not liked it. I think this was, even now looking back, or at that time, looking at our relationship, I thought it was an extremely good, thorough, very warm, professional relationship that could happen between a writer and a director. I must also mention another fact, that for this script, when I offered him a remuneration, he denied that. He said, no, I have got my remuneration. You had paid me as a writer, and this is the script for that. I said, no, you had written a script, and we had a little debate, but he was very firm on that. Howsoever I insisted on paying him for this script, he said, no, I will not take that payment. I have got my payment I've got my remuneration. From the financial point of view, from every aspect, without any hesitation, I can say that was a wonderful relationship between a writer and a director. I must also admit that I was privileged to have that kind of a relationship right in the beginning of my career as a filmmaker. And as far as Akrit is concerned, Tendulkar's own response to that was something which I have always cherished. He said that, Amol, this is one of the most violent films that I have seen without showing violence even in one single frame. The way you have managed to bring out the inner violence in our society, in man-woman relationship, and everywhere, at every stage and in every layer, that violence which I wanted to bring in my script, you have brought it out so beautifully and so eloquently. I am really thankful to you. This was one of the finest compliments that I think can be gotten by a director from his writer, and that too a celebrity writer like Vijay Tendulkar. Thank you.
Thank you, Amol. If I may, I'll like to take 5 minutes referring to what Amol said, and that was the relationship between writer and the director, particularly when it involves writer's vision and the director's vision. And Anjum referred to a relationship of this kind. Ardha Satya, which I made, developed almost in an improvisational manner. Tendulkar referred to me a Marathi short story written by Panwalkar, one of his very close friends and a favorite writer, short story writer, called Surya. I can read Marathi, I can understand. So I read that story. I liked that story. Tendulkar said, there is something here. You decide whether you like it and then we can think about it. I read the story. I told Tendulkar, yes, the story is very nice. Characters are good. Maybe there is some film, but I don't see full-length film in this. Because the story ki jaan bahut choti hai. He said, yes. But let's imagine this character in real life. Suppose he is actually a police inspector, and what can happen to him? Let's imagine. So we had a few sessions where we imagined what could happen to a person like him who has a particular kind of nature, a particular relationship with his father, who was very oppressive kind of a person and a policeman himself. So we thought of several situations, and at one stage Tendulkar said, okay, now let's stop talking about it, let me write something and then we will discuss further. The script emerged like that, and there were not more than 3 sessions on that script. He wrote half a script, we went through it, then he completed the script, we went through it again, I made some points, and he wrote the final script, and that was it. While shooting, I had some ideas, particularly about the ending of Ardha Satya. And I discussed it with Tendulkar, and Tendulkar said, no, I think I will stand by what I have written. I think that's the correct end. So I said, but I also feel very strongly that what I am feeling should also has certain value. So what do we do? So he said, you are the director, you decide. So I said, no, I won't do this. And with full respect to him and his views, because I know that he will not argue just on the basis of his ego. He has a particular point of view on the basis of which he's making his point. So what I did was, I shot 2 endings, fully. And not that the ending that I had suggested, so I paid particular attention to that in shooting it, and the other ending I treated it little more indifferently. No. Both endings were shot with equal attention and passion. Then I edited both of them. Rest of the film was same. I edited that ending twice because that was the last reel. And I invited Tendulkar. We had a show in Broadway. There used to be a small preview theater there. And there were only 2 people in the hall, myself and Tendulkar. I projected the entire film with his ending. Then I said, I will now add my ending, and then you see it again. So I replaced the endings, and we played the last reel again. And it was over. Silence. I'm waiting. So he said, it's not just a question of ending anymore. It's a question of how you have interpreted the script and how you have developed the character up to that point. And I think your ending works better than mine. And so go ahead with that. I thought that was such a generous gesture. He was not doing any favor to me, but he had the grace to see somebody's point of view, and if he felt that it adds to the overall work, he was open to it. He was not egoist to that extent. Of course, he argued for his point of view to the best up to the last moment, but he also allowed the other person to have his point of view, and ultimately if he felt convinced by that, he accepted it. I think that is a very rare quality a writer can have. Because Anjum spoke about the vision of the writer. Now there are several shades to that. And that can be a different topic of discussion altogether. But here, a man who will never work with anybody unless he shared a vision with him, and then there is a major change or an alternative being suggested, he would be open to it and accept it if he found it convincing. I think that was one extremely rare quality in him which made the relationship with the directors very, very special. I now invite Mr. Jabbar Patel to share his views.
Thank you, Govind. It's really wonderful to have Film Writer Association here today and a wonderful workshop, Anjum and all your colleagues. I really admire keeping Tendulkar in the focus. That's very important today because it's not what happened on 26th December, but looking at the whole socio-political situation in last 50 years, I think we needed here thoroughly where a man writes a script and it goes into the cinema, they translate it into the visuals. And how we are connected vis-a-vis the common man in our society to cinema. And here's a man who actually knew world cinema very well. He had seen world cinema, I'm telling you that. He knew world cinema, he had all the European writings with him. He's seen a lot, seen the word a lot. And to work with such a person was something, I can tell you that he was himself. To me, he was like going into some kinds of post-graduation in a university. And when I say this, I say with responsibility because there are so many literary figures in this country. But very rarely I've seen people are very good at words when they write novel, short story, which people have adopted for cinema. But he is a man who writes and he himself translates the frames into how it can be. So this is a kind of a relationship, a writer, a great writer like him, with great human angle. So it will be very interesting to have what kind of innovations, what kind of structural changes, what kind of content he meant when he wrote. It's not my scripts. Even Govind's script or Shyam Benegal's scripts. My association with him was actually my pre-medical days when actually his play came. And I think the writers here, when we talk of craft, is very important. That a man in 1957 writes a play called Man is an Island. Manus Nava's a bit. It's about 50 pages play. And it was ridiculed for one reason, because in that play, there was a laced dialogue. It's a theater. It's a laced dialogue, or more of instruction in the pauses. Like a character says something, why should do that? He writes pause. No, I never meant to do that. And he just looked very furiously at the other character, pause. So much that he was ridiculous. And so much so that the great writers at the time said, he wrote in the preface that let people see what it is or let people feel. I've already moved to my next play. And people very ridiculously also say, okay, we also move to next playwright. So much so kind of a thing, happening. And it's happening where a Marathi theatre was so vocal, so verbal, absolutely full of words, a very flowery kind of a language. And this man brings the kind of antithesis, he brings minimum possible dialogue, minimum and more an actor in this whole space to react to each other with a play of light and shadow, with whatever decor you have. And that was my association, and all the way I went a very long, away from Pune, Mumbai, in a play called Sholapur. All mill workers' plays, and I was a student into the college. And I could understand this man is writing something different. And that was my first experience with this full-length play. And then when I moved to my medical college in Pune, I did his short plays. Another strength of Tendulkar. See how a writer has groomed himself into all these different facets of writing. he wrote this kind of a very different kind of play, and then he strong short plays. Series of short plays. So today, you can say in the whole Indian literature and we see of theatre, I think Tendulkar is the only person who has strong short plays. And with this, I grew with him. It was a very important stage for me. See, when you're a medical person, when you do pre-clinical subjects, you're not to face the patients. I mean, you go actually to clinical things, you see the poverty. That's why in the general medical colleges, when you see the civil hospitals, the poverty, why the patient is here. And I could start relating Tendulkar's socio-political angle to look at the common man. It was a time when we were working together, and then a play like Panchi Aise Aate Hain, play like Shrimant, Amir, and then he was watching me. And different combinations. For example, there was an American play, Hasty Heart, which he translated into Marathi, and we did the production as the characters are. Like American characters, Australian characters, and he said, I mean that. If there's a black man, somebody should play a black man. It's Australian, It's a Scottish. So all things went, and there came a very pleasant play called Ashipa Khareti. I did it. It was a grand success. That was a wonderful association with him. And I was waiting for a play to come to me because Ashipa Khareti was written by somebody and it came. And then he really wrote a play for me was Ghanshiram Kotwal. And that was a relationship where I came with visuals on the stage with relating to music and the verse and the prose dialogue. So this was again a very different kind of a relationship with him. So now, a time came, I was not in cinema, I was in Pune. I was just watching masters into the film archive. I was seeing Bergman, Kurosawa, and every theatre person, whatever he says, had an ambition to go out of this somewhere there and take a camera and do something. I was like anybody. When my colleagues were learning into FTII, and I was just doing a medicine in BJ Medical College and watching the archival films from Satyajit to Kurosawa to Bergman. And then suddenly one day, a script comes to me, which is written by Tendulkar. Not for me, it was a script. And also casting done with Neelu Phule and Dr. Lagu. And they said, this is the script and you have to work on this. I was very faithful. Looking at the script. And I think it's full of dialogue because it's a kind of a confrontation between two characters. I was very faithful to Tendulkar. And from first dialogue to the end, I was very, very, very faithful to him. Film became a kind of a landmark and then he was selected for Berlin. But here I come, where with the flexibility, then we started. I was studying cinema, I was in theatre, but now the real confrontation started. Where really, as a screenplay writer, where whatever is giving to me, do I agree? Because I started understanding lenses. I started understanding the work of cameraman. I started understanding the cinema finally when actually I saw my film with Mangesh Desai in the re-recording room. And I said, oh hell, what I'm doing? Finally, when you come for the final mixing, you come to know what mistakes you have committed. It's a final stage. And then I understood that there's something wrong with also script or maybe somewhere in the ideology of a playwright or a screenplay writer. I think something in me was coming up, creeping up. And then I started saying that I want to do this, I want to do this. A kind of an ego altar, created into filmmaker. I want to say something. Because I was told by people that theatre is a playwright's medium and cinema is a writer's medium, director's medium. So I thought so. Because, well, in the playwright writes a play, he plays with the word, and cinema is with lenses, I visualize. And then one day I gave a proposal to him that I want to make a film on a political novel called Singhasan. But when I see, it's a kind of a game between the finance minister trying to topple the government of the chief minister. Direct confrontation of the chief minister of Maharashtra and the finance minister of Maharashtra. But I thought that novel was not sufficient. I wanted to add one more writer, one more novel of the same writer, and that is why it made 900 pages. And when I approached him, there are 900 pages, and you have to write just 2 hours and 10 minutes film out of it. It's somebody else's work. And I saw for the first time such a man, his sole socio-political acumen of understanding the political situation And he took all the 2 novels and made into one film of 2 hours and 20 minutes. And it is not his work, it's somebody else's work. A very eminent man who had worked Sahitya Akademi Award, like Arun Sadhu. But he did it. And then I understood that this man is flexible as a screenplay writer. Where I was coming into with him, because somehow, I don't know, I always blame parallel cinema for not using the music. To me, the strength of mainstream cinema has been music. And most of the some parallel people in the movement, they totally neglected that kind of a strength of music. But I use music, where Tendulkar and me, we confronted. Especially in Samna, at 4 songs. And the film was selected for Berlin. Now there was a dilemma. So looking at him, as Anjum said, I said, okay, we cut this song, we cut this song. And you know one thing? He said, look, you have made a film, keeping the songs in the mind, don't cut. This film must go to Berlin with German subtitles, with all the songs, whatever you have. And then I knew, oh well, there is a man who is flexible. Now he's understanding the music, use of music also. And very lot of different combinations took place. Like 2 novels coming here, and then I narrated one novel called Beghar. And his perception, the whole human logic was so clear. I was narrating, I came, I think just 60% of the novel. He said, stop. Your film is complete. I said, no. He said, 40% of the novel to go. How can the film is complete? He said, Jabbar, the film is complete. Stop here. Don't narrate to me now. I said, this novel is coming from a very famous writer. How can you say that? He said, okay, tell her that the film will be this. If she agrees, I write. And Umartha emerged as a film where he really stopped at 60% of the original novel and completed the script. So this how, it was a kind of a relationship with him in theater and also in cinema. I could see this man absolutely restless, he said. Absolutely restless. Not that very topically something happens and he reacts. When we say violence, he was really concerned. Just imagine a man, when his thesis, he went to Eroda jail and he asked for the permission to watch the hanging. The whole pain of a man who is being hanged. And he witnessed some hangings. And he would see in a very cold way. And if you met Tendulkar, you just see how he could have managed that. At the same time, such a concern for all human rights, to the extreme, all the important left movements, also ridiculing left, mind well. Extreme left, he ridiculed. Extreme right, he ridiculed. These are both types. For example, I give you an Ashif Pakhari, the Panchiya se aate hain. I turned into a film. In the original script, it's the RSS guy is there in the play. When I just wanted permission for him to film it, when I did a film called Musafir, I wanted to place him to Kerala. See, his perception of the whole political system was so great. The RSS guy in the play, he converted into a leftist Marxist guy. And I can tell you, in the play where I had laughter as a certain kind of a very typical grammar of RSS and typical grammars of leftic jargon. The laughter of RSS man, where people ridicule in the audience, they ridicule leftist man also. And a very bookish man, RSS man. Oh, Hindu Rashtra, da 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 da. Here, American, same kind of language used. But he ridiculed the whole thing. What I feel is this man has a great human logic. That was the basis of the whole thing. The basic was human logic. And his logic was so transparent that when he first took a story, I think I never asked him what is the genre, what is going to be. When he combined 2 novels together, 900 pages to make a film which is a political film, finally, the whole structure, the scene-wise and with the dialogue came as a wonderful thriller. He never told me there's going to be a thriller. And you will see the whole treatment he wrote was a thriller. And of course, like Govind and Amol I have faced problems with him. Major problem with Umbertha. He had somebody in the mind as the main protagonist. I had Smita in my mind. He immediately said, no, this is not job for Smita Patil. I know she's a good girl, no. But I had committed to Smita. Smita, a very committed actor. He said, okay, it's up to you. The script is not for her, I'm telling you that. I shot. I said, please come. And Smita was absolutely like a very, I can't see such kind of attention into an actor. Just sitting in a corner and watching what this man is saying, and after the whole rush print was over and suddenly he said, where's this girl? I said, she's there in the corner sitting somewhere. And she came and both made, and he said, it was my mistake. You did wonders. I think this kind of a attitude he had. And all kinds of combinations he brought, and I think it was a wonderful thing to work. After Bhashiram, I wanted many plays, he didn't write for me. After Musafir, I wanted films, he didn't write for me. He said, this is not for you, this is not for you. I waited. Till last breath, till he died and passed away in Pune. I've seen his growth. The kind of anger he used to. One day he said, somebody asked me mischievously, if suppose you have a gun and one bullet, you are in so much violence, would you like to do something with the gun? Yes, sir, for a long time I haven't done that, but I feel like doing it. He said, what do you do? I said, if I have only one bullet, I'll kill Narendra Modi. And it came in such a big way, it needed something. And many left-oriented people, right, okay, they will be to bash him. But all the left people said, what Tendulkar is talking, the man who stood all the time for human rights is going to kill Narendra Modi. The whole point was, this man was angry. And this anger was thrown there. I think this anger was reflected into his essays, short stories, novels, and the films. And I really admire him for allowing really the freedom to the filmmaker. Not the theatre, because theatre was his, but not as a thing. Now I'll just take 1 minute to say, it's something to do with me. But he had that egoism. One book, publisher wanted to publish the screenplays. And then on the cover was Jabbar Patel's Umbertha, written by Vijay Tendulkar. And he told the publisher, what is this? How is Jabbar Patel's Umbertha written by Tendulkar? It should be Vijay Tendulkar's Umbertha, directed by Jabbar Patel. Govind knows this incident very well. It was over many directors. And then it was such a problem. Because the publisher said, Mr. Tendulkar, you're right. You have a certain kind of a relationship with Jabbar, and Jabbar may agree also. But this book is not your script. This book, we have gone to Steenbeck and saw the film of Jabbar Patel, his camera movement and everything. All the camera movements are mentioned here, and those are there. But I was still scared. I went to him. I said, if you feel like, I don't have any hazard, I don't have any ego. If the script is written by Tendulkar, it's honor for me. You won't really... They're right. It's about the film. So I think it should be a film by Jabbar Patel, written by Tendulkar. But I asked him, suppose, really from your heart, that you are writing for somebody, and where you really see that a film by and written by Tendulkar. He said, shall I tell you one thing? In India, you asked this question, Jabbar, to me. With respect to you, you grew with me, you're like my child. And his relations with me, it was like a father and child. He said, there's only one filmmaker. He just passed away. His name was Satyajit Ray. If I would have written something for him and said, related by Satyajit Ray's film, written by Tendulkar, I would have agreed. I salute to the great man. He was the only filmmaker to me who could have such honor with me and such kind of a ego. But with all this, He was a great man, and it's a great loss to me personally, because I was supposed to write my next film, Mahatma Phule, which is not, and he also promised me a play on Mahabharata, which I am not going to get it. But I'm very thankful to you that you gave me a chance to speak something about a man who to my guru, and all the experimentation with all kind of genres, all kind of writings of Tendulkar, and a very personal touch with Tendulkar. Thank you, Anjum. Thank you, Film Writer Association. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jabbar. We are running out of time now. But very, very good presentation, very good insights about him. Imtiaz.
विजय तेंदुलकर के साथ हुई कई मुलाकातें और कुछ खास बातें। दोस्तों, कुछ यादें हैं जो विजय तेंदुलकर से हुई कई मुलाकातों के साथ जुड़ी हुई हैं। उन बातों को आज आप लोगों के साथ शेयर करना है। शायद इन यादों से उनकी पर्सनालिटी और शख्सियत का कोई एक आधा ऐसा पहलू उजागर हो जाए जो अब तक लोगों तक नहीं पहुंच पाया होगा। इस स्टेटमेंट के साथ अपनी बात की शुरुआत करना चाहूंगा कि विजय तेंदुलकर वॉज अ ग्रेट वेल विशर ऑफ राइटर्स। अगर विजय तेंदुलकर से आपकी मुलाकात हुई है और बार बार हुई है तो उनको भूलना, भुलाना या भूल जाना नामुमकिन है। वो बेहतरीन क्वालिटीज के इंसान थे। मैंने विजय तेंदुलकर के 2 ड्रामे गिधाड़े एज गिद इन हिंदी और अशी पाखरे एती एज मैं ही तो वो फरिश्ता इन उर्दू अडेप्ट किए। इसलिए न सिर्फ उनसे बार बार मिलने का मौका मिला, बल्कि उनके ख्यालात और फलसफे को जानने और समझने का अवसर भी हासिल हुआ। विजय तेंदुलकर से मेरी पहली मुलाकात केसी कॉलेज की कैंटीन में शाम को 6-7 बजे के करीब अर्ली 70s में हुई थी। बहुत साल पुरानी बात नहीं है, मुझे तो ऐसा लगता है जैसे कल की बात है। मैं कॉलेज के स्टेप पर खड़ा हुआ था और कॉलेज के एक स्टाफ ने मेरा ध्यान विजय तेंदुलकर की तरफ आकर्षित किया था, जो कॉलेज के ऑपोजिट फुटपाथ पर खड़े थे। उसने कहा था, वो जो वहां खड़े हैं विजय तेंदुलकर हैं, जिनके नाटक गिधाड़े और सकाराम बाइंडर इन दिनों चर्चा में। मैं फौरन रोड क्रॉस करके उनके पास पहुंचा, खुद को इंट्रोड्यूस करवाया और तेंदुलकर से रिक्वेस्ट की कि मेरे साथ कॉलेज कैंटीन में बैठें और मुझे ये मौका दें कि मैं उनके साथ चाय पी सकूं। तेंदुलकर साहब वहां खड़े रहकर किसी दोस्त का इंतजार कर रहे थे। उनके दोस्त केसी कॉलेज में एमए के लेक्चर अटेंड कर रहे थे। कॉलेज कैंटीन में उनके साथ कम से कम आधे घंटे की मुलाकात में बहुत सारी थिएटर से जुड़ी बातें हुई। उन दिनों मैंने एक ड्रामा सिसकते अरमान नाम से किया था, जिसमें फारूक शेख और सुलभा हरियाणा में काम किया था। एक मराठी प्ले का एडेप्टेशन था ये। मैंने तेंदुलकर से कहा था कि मैं सीरियस थिएटर करना चाहता हूं, किसी थिएटर ग्रुप से जुड़ना चाहता हूं। उन्होंने सलाह दी थी कि मैं दादर में छबिलदास स्कूल जाकर अरविंद देशपांडे और सुलभा देशपांडे से मिलूं, क्योंकि उन्होंने इन दोनों छबिलदास स्कूल में एक्सपेरिमेंटल थिएटर मूवमेंट शुरू किया हुआ था। फिर करीब 1-1.5 साल बाद मैं विजय तेंदुलकर से मिलने विले पार्ले में उनके कुमार नाम की सोसाइटी के फ्लैट में गया। इस बीच मुझे सेंट्रल बैंक में आर्टिस्ट कोटा में नौकरी मिल गई थी और मैं चाहता था कि विजय तेंदुलकर का गिधाड़े नाटक सेंट्रल बैंक रिक्रिएशन क्लब प्रोड्यूस करे। उनसे घर पर मिलने के बाद मैंने उन्हें याद दिलाया कि मैं उनसे केसी कॉलेज की कैंटीन में मिल चुका हूं, शायद उन्हें याद हो। उन्होंने कहा था, एक ऐसी मुलाकात है जिसे मैं भूल ही नहीं सकता। मैंने विजय तेंदुलकर साहब से कहा कि आज मैं आपके पास इस उम्मीद से आया हूं कि आप मुझे अपना लिखा ड्रामा गिधाड़े हिंदी भाषा में करने की इजाजत दे दें। उन्होंने पूछा, प्रोड्यूस कौन करेगा? मैंने कहा, मैं कोशिश करके सेंट्रल बैंक को राजी करवा लूंगा कि वो प्रोडक्शन का खर्च बर्दाश्त करें। उन्होंने पूछा, नाटक को डायरेक्ट कौन करेगा? मैंने कहा, मैं। उन्होंने पूछा, मेन रोल कौन करेगा? मैंने कहा, मैं। और ये भी कहा कि नाटक को मैं ही अडेप्ट करूंगा। उन्होंने कहा, कल आना। मेरी हिम्मत ही नहीं हुई कि आगे कुछ कह सकूं। उनके घर से बाहर आया, विले पार्ले स्टेशन के रास्ते पर चलना शुरू किया। सोच रहा था कि इजाजत नहीं मिलेगी, डरा डरा सा, सहमा सहमा सा। दूसरे दिन फिर तेंदुलकर साहब के घर पहुंचा। उन्होंने मेरे जज्बे को सराहते हुए इजाजत दे दी, बेशक नाटक करो, मगर नाटक को किसी ने ऑलरेडी हिंदी भाषा में ट्रांसलेट किया हुआ है, तो उस पर ट्रांसलेट करने की मेहनत मत करो। मैंने वो ट्रांसलेटेड वर्जन पढ़ा और दूसरे दिन उन्होंने ले जाकर वापस कर दिया। ये वर्जन मुझे ठीक नहीं लगता है, मैं खुद ही अडेप्ट करूंगा। उन्होंने उसकी भी इजाजत दी थी। जब नाटक अडेप्ट कर लिया तो लेकर उनके पास गया कि उन्हें सुना दूं, मगर उन्होंने कहा कि मैं उसे वसंत देव साहब को सुनाऊं, जिन्होंने उनके कई नाटकों को ट्रांसलेट या अडेप्ट किया था हिंदी जबान में। पोर्चुगीज चर्च दादर के पास वसंत देव साहब के घर पर जाकर अडेप्टेड वर्जन की रीडिंग की। वसंत देव साहब ने सराहना की और तेंदुलकर साहब को फोन करके कहा कि अगर वो बजाते खुद नाटक को अडेप्ट करते तो शायद ऐसा ना कर पाते। तेंदुलकर साहब ने खुद ये बात मुझे बताई और ये भी कहा कि वो चाहते थे कि नाटक का अच्छा सा हिंदी अनुवाद हो जाए। अब चूंकि ऐसा हो गया है तो वो चाहते हैं कि नाटक को हिंदी में पब्लिश किया जाए। मैं नाटक की रिहर्सल में बिजी हो गया। सारे एक्टर्स सेंट्रल बैंक के एम्प्लॉयज थे। जब नाटक सेट हो गया तो मैंने तेंदुलकर साहब को रिक्वेस्ट की कि रिहर्सल में आए और अपनी राय दें। नरीमन पॉइंट पर चंद्रमुखी नाम की बिल्डिंग में 16वें फ्लोर पर रिहर्सल हो रही थी। तेंदुलकर साहब वहां आए, कंधे पर एक बैग, पैंट और बुशर्ट पहने हुए। तेंदुलकर जैसे ग्रेट फनकार राइटर एक्चुअली मेरी रिहर्सल में आए हैं। उनके आने से जो खुशी उस वक्त मुझे हुई थी आज मैं लफ्जों में बयान नहीं कर सकता। पहले एक की रिहर्सल देखी और अकेले में मुझसे बातचीत की। कहा सारे एक्टर सिर्फ हीरोइन जिसका नाम वर्षा शाह है को छोड़कर बुरे हैं। मेरा तो पहले से जमीन निकल गई, खिसक गई। मैंने पूछा सारे बुरे हैं? उन्होंने जवाब दिया हाँ। मैं बिल्कुल इनसिक्योर हो गया। मैंने पूछा मैं कैसा हूं? कुछ देर बाद उन्होंने जवाब दिया बुरे हो। शायद बहुत बुरे हो कहना चाहते थे मगर मेरी हिम्मत टूट ना जाए इसलिए ऐसा नहीं कहा। तुम तो रोल को समझे बगैर ही परफॉर्म कर रहे हो। रमाकांत पितले नाटक का हीरो एक टाइगर है। मैंने उनसे बहस की। रमाकांत मेरे नजदीक दिल से एक बच्चा है, कुछ इस तरह की अजीब बहस। उन्होंने बहस को एंटरटेन नहीं किया। सेकेंड एक्ट की रिहर्सल देखे बगैर चले गए मगर इजाजत बरकरार रखी कि मैं नाटक को स्टेज कर सकता हूं। मुझे इस बात का एहसास हो चुका था कि वो रिहर्सल से खुश नहीं थे। मैंने उनसे सुनी सारी बातों को नाटक में इनकॉर्पोरेट करना शुरू कर दिया। एक इंपॉर्टेंट और अहम बात मैं यहां यह भी बताना चाहूंगा कि रिहर्सल के दौरान एक एक्टर बहुत ज्यादा परेशान करने लगा। रिहर्सल में इरेगुलर आने लगा। दरअसल ड्रामे की रिहर्सल के दौरान उसे एक प्रोफेशनल ड्रामे में रोल मिल गया था। मैंने विजय तेंदुलकर के घर जाकर अपनी परेशानी बयान की। उन्होंने सलाह दी कि उस एक्टर को प्ले में से बाहर निकाल दो। थिएटर में डिसिप्लिन का बनाए रखना बेहद जरूरी है। उनका स्टेटमेंट आज तक मेरे कानों में गूंज रहा है। मैंने तेंदुलकर साहब की बात पर अमल किया और उस एक्टर को निकाल दिया, ये सोचे बगैर कि अगर दूसरा एक्टर ना मिल पाए तो ड्रामा स्टेज कैसे होगा। मगर दूसरा एक्टर मिल गया और 28 नवंबर 1974 को पाटकर हॉल में गिट ड्रामे को स्टेज किया गया। मेरे कई बार रिक्वेस्ट करने के बावजूद वो शो में नहीं आए मगर डॉक्टर लागू और दीपा लागू जिन्होंने मराठी नाटक गिदाड़े में काम किया था नाटक को देखा। कमाल अमरोही भी फैमिली के साथ आए थे। शो खत्म होने के बाद डॉक्टर लागू बैक स्टेज में आकर मिले और नाटक के इंटरप्रिटेशन की तारीफ की। मुझे उस वक्त लगा था कि शायद वो तारीफ उन्होंने रस्मन की होगी मगर ऐसा नहीं था, क्योंकि जब तेंदुलकर साहब से मैंने इस बात का जिक्र किया तो उन्होंने कहा था डॉक्टर लागू को अगर नाटक बुरा लगता तो उठकर चले जाते, नाटक अच्छा होगा तभी वो बैठे रहे। फिर नाटक 9 मार्च को 1975 को रविंद्र नाट्य मंदिर में स्टेज हुआ और तेंदुलकर साहब अपनी फैमिली के साथ नाटक में आए। हालांकि उन्होंने मेरा पूरा नाटक विंग में बैठकर देखा। मुझे बैक स्टेज पर टेक्नीशियंस यानी लाइट ऑपरेटर, म्यूजिक ऑपरेटर को इंस्ट्रक्शन देते हुए देखा। सलाह दी सारी जिम्मेदारी यानी लाइट्स, म्यूजिक वगैरह की खुद ही मत लो, इसे दूसरे प्रोफेशनल्स के हवाले करो, उन्हें ट्रस्ट करो। इस शो के होने से पहले गिर नागपुर में महाराष्ट्र नाट्य महोत्सव में हो चुका था और मुझे ड्रामे के डायरेक्शन का दूसरा प्ले को सेकेंड बेस्ट प्ले का अवार्ड मिल चुका था। तेंदुलकर इस बात से बेहद खुश थे। तेंदुलकर फैमिली के साथ नाटक देखने आए, उन्होंने मुझे बड़ी इज्जत बख्शी है, ऐसा उन दिनों थिएटर में मेरे दोस्तों का मानना था, क्योंकि तेंदुलकर नाटक अपना देखने जाते नहीं थे, ऐसा उन लोगों का कहना था। इसके बाद तेंदुलकर साहब से उनके घर पर मुलाकात होती रही। उन्होंने अपने लिखा नाटक बेबी स्टेज करने की इजाजत दी, मगर इस शर्त पर कि मैं पहले सत्यदेव दुबे से उसे स्टेज करने की इजाजत ले लूं, क्योंकि उन्होंने बेबी स्टेज करने की इजाजत दे चुके थे। मैं दुबे जी से सेंट कोलंबा नाम के स्कूल में नाना चौक पर मिला, मगर उन्होंने इजाजत नहीं दी। इस वाकये को बताने का मकसद इतना है कि अगर तेंदुलकर चाहते तो मुझे इजाजत दे सकते थे, मगर उन्होंने ऐसा नहीं किया, क्योंकि किसी और को नाटक का परफॉर्मेंस कमिट कर चुके थे। थिएटर के टूवर्ड्स उनका कमिटमेंट बिल्कुल एब्सोल्यूट था। इसी दौरान मैंने उनसे अपनी एक पर्सनल प्रॉब्लम लेकर मिला। मैं शादी करने का फैसला कर लिया था और रहने को घर नहीं था। रहने को घर नहीं है, सारा जहां हमारी जैसी सिचुएशन थी। तेंदुलकर साहब ने मेरी परेशानी को समझा, सलाह दी शादी कर लो, अपने आप रास्ता मिल जाएगा। अपनी खुद की मिसाल दी, कहा शादी के बाद वो चरनी रोड पर किसी चाल में किसी के साथ रूम शेयर कर सकती। अगर इरादा कर लिया तो शादी कर लो, घर वगैरह का इंतजाम हो जाएगा। उनकी उस सलाह को मैंने मान लिया था। ही वॉज अ ग्रेट काउंसलिंग सोल एंड आई थिंक फ्रेंड्स विल एग्री, बिसाइड्स बीइंग अ ग्रेट प्ले राइट एंड फिल्म राइटर। फिर मैंने उनके और ड्रामे अशी पाखरे ए थी, जिसे सबसे पहले डॉक्टर जब्बार पटेल साहब ने किया था, उर्दू जबान में अडेप्ट करने की इजाजत मांगी। इस ड्रामे में एक फंडामेंटलिस्ट हिंदू का किरदार था, जैसे अभी डॉक्टर जब्बार पटेल साहब ने आपको बताया कि आरएसएस का किरदार था। मैं चाहता था कि उसे एक फंडामेंटलिस्ट मुस्लिम किरदार में बदलूं, जमाते इस्लामी के किरदार में। तेंदुलकर साहब ने इजाजत देते वक्त सिर्फ इतना कहा था, क्यों नहीं, अगर कोई फंडामेंटलिस्ट हिंदू हो सकता है तो फंडामेंटलिस्ट मुस्लिम भी हो सकता है, करो। उन्होंने कहा। ड्रामे को अडेप्ट किया, शफी इनामदार ने उसे डायरेक्ट किया था। तेंदुलकर साहब उस ड्रामे को पृथ्वी थिएटर में स्टेज होते हुए देखे आए। एक और वाकया जो मुझे अच्छी तरह से याद है, वो द फिल्म राइटर एसोसिएशन और फिल्म अर्धसत्य से जुड़ा हुआ है। फिल्म अर्धसत्य की रिलीज और इनॉर्मस सक्सेस के बाद राइटर एसोसिएशन ने उन्हें एक ट्रॉफी प्रेजेंट की थी। विजय तेंदुलकर साहब ने उस ट्रॉफी को पोलाइटली एक्सेप्ट करने से मना कर दिया। उनका कहना था कि उन्होंने फिल्मों में कोई बहुत बड़ा योगदान नहीं किया है, इसलिए वो खुद को इस ट्रॉफी का मुस्तहिक नहीं समझते। जब मैं एसोसिएशन में थोड़ा एक्टिव हुआ तो उस वक्त के प्रेसिडेंट जनाब अली रजा साहब ने रिक्वेस्ट की कि मैं तेंदुलकर साहब से मिलूं और उनसे रिक्वेस्ट करूं कि उस ट्रॉफी को एक्सेप्ट कर लें। एसोसिएशन को यह बात नागवार लग रही थी कि कितने बड़े राइटर ने एसोसिएशन के लिए सम्मान को एक्सेप्ट नहीं किया था। तेंदुलकर साहब उस वक्त तक विले पार्ले में अपने नए रेसिडेंट में शिफ्ट हो चुके थे। मैंने उनसे मुलाकात की और रिक्वेस्ट की कि फिल्म राइटर एसोसिएशन ये चाहती है कि आप उस ट्रॉफी को एक्सेप्ट कर लें। तेंदुलकर ने मेरी इस रिक्वेस्ट को, जो कि मैंने ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ एसोसिएशन की थी, माना और पार्ले में तिलक विद्या मंदिर स्कूल में एसोसिएशन के स्पेशल फंक्शन में ट्रॉफी को एक्सेप्ट किया। उन्होंने अपनी स्पीच में यह कहा था कि उन्होंने उस ऑनर को एक्सेप्ट नहीं किया था क्योंकि वो जेन्युइनली महसूस करते थे कि उस लाइफ टाइम अवार्ड के योग्य नहीं है। फिर उनके ड्रामे कन्यादान को प्रोड्यूस और डायरेक्ट करने के सिलसिले में उनसे कई बार मिलना हुआ। प्रिया तेंदुलकर, दिलीप कुलकर्णी और ओम पुरी इस ड्रामे में मेन किरदार अदा करने वाले थे। उस ड्रामे की मुहूर्त में शरीक हुए थे, मगर मैं कुछ वजूहात या रीजंस की वजह से वो प्ले स्टेज नहीं कर पाया। फिर फिल्म परिंदा के लेखन की वजह से फिल्म इंडस्ट्री में मेरा अपना एक सफर शुरू हुआ। विजय तेंदुलकर ने से इन दिनों मिलने का सिलसिला जरूर कम हुआ, मगर फोन पर बातों का सिलसिला जारी रहा। प्रिया तेंदुलकर के गुजर जाने के बाद, फिर उनके बेटे राजू के गुजर जाने के बाद मुलाकात हुई। इन दोनों हादसों के बाद उनसे जब भी मिला वो दुखी तो थे, मगर इस दुख का इजहार उन्होंने कभी भी नहीं किया। उनसे मिलकर, उनसे बात करके जैसे हमेशा ही तकलीफों से भरी जिंदगी से लड़ने का हौसला मिलता था। वो अपना विले पार्ले का रेसिडेंस छोड़कर अंधेरी में शिफ्ट हो गए थे। तब मैं उनसे मिलने गया था अपने बेटे की शादी में इनवाइट करने के लिए। मेरी बीवी मेरे साथ थी। तेंदुलकर ने उसने करीब 1 घंटा हमारे साथ गुजारा। मैंने उन्हें पुरानी बातें याद दिलाई, अपने फिल्मी करियर के बारे में उनसे बात की, उन्हें याद दिलाया कि उनकी हिम्मत अफजाई की वजह से मैंने शादी की थी और आज अपने बेटे की शादी के रिसेप्शन में उन्हें इनवाइट करने आया हूं। केसी कॉलेज में हुई एक मुलाकात चलते चलते कब दोस्ती और फिर गुरु शिष्य के रिश्ते में बदल गई, मुझे इस बात का पता ही नहीं चला। तब धरती कागज करूं, लेखनी सब बन रहा है, 7 समुद्र की मसी करूं, गुरु गुण लिखा न जाए। सारी पृथ्वी को कागज मानकर तथा समस्त जंगलों की लकड़ी की कलम बनाकर 7 समुद्रों की स्याही द्वारा गुरु की महिमा लिखी जाए, तब भी वो पूरी नहीं लिखी जा सकती। गुरु की महिमा असीम है, उसे कोई भी नहीं लिख सकता। उस दिन उन्होंने अपना दिल खोलकर जैसे रख दिया था। सुनने की बात है आप लोगों को जरा ध्यान से। फिल्म इंडस्ट्री में राइटर्स के साथ जो सलूक हो रहा था उससे वो बेहद नाराज है। खास करके राइटर्स के पेमेंट और क्रेडिट को लेकर वो सिर्फ नाराज ही नहीं बल्कि गुस्सा भी थे। प्रोड्यूसर्स पर उनके रुपए बाकी थे जो कि उन्हें नहीं मिल पा रहे थे। उन्होंने कहा था कि जब भी वो अपने रुपयों का तकाजा करते हैं, मांगते हैं, तो जवाब ये मिलता है कि फिल्म में लॉस हो गया। लॉस हो जाने के बावजूद वो लोग तो 5 स्टार होटल की कंफर्ट में जी रहे हैं, मगर उन्हें यानी तेंदुलकर को सर्वाइवल के लिए न चाहते हुए भी अपना विले पार्ले का रेस्टोरेंट बेचना पड़ा था। उनकी सलाह थी कि हर राइटर को चाहिए कि वो डायरेक्टर बन जाए, क्योंकि राइटर की इज्जत की बात सिर्फ कहने तक की है। उनसे आखिरी मुलाकात दादर में चवान थिएटर के बाहर, जबकि थोड़ी बारिश हो रही थी, एक्सपेरिमेंटल थिएटर के ग्रीवियंसेस को लेकर हुई एक मूवमेंट में हुई थी। वो काफी बीमार थे, बुखार था, मगर इसके बावजूद एक्सपेरिमेंटल थिएटर मूवमेंट से अपनी सॉलिडारिटी शो करने के लिए वहां आए थे। बस मेरी उनसे ये आखिरी मुलाकात थी। उसके बाद ये मनहूस खबर सुनी तो हम सबको छोड़कर चले गए। उनके ग्रेटनेस की बातें तो बार बार होती रहेंगी कि उनका बॉडी ऑफ वर्क ड्रामों की दुनिया में और फिल्मों में बेमिसाल है, कोई कंपैरिजन नहीं है उसका। ये मेरी खुशकिस्मती है कि मैंने उन्हें करीब से देखा और उनके साथ बैठने और बातों करने का मौका मिला। तेंदुलकर के साथ हुई सारी बातें ऐसा लगता है जैसे कल हुई हैं। वो मेरे साथ हमेशा जिंदा रहेंगे, बिल्कुल मेरी मां की तरह, जो इस दुनिया में नहीं है मगर मेरे साथ मुझ में जिंदा है। तेंदुलकर के साथ मेरा रिश्ता एक दिली और रूहानी रिश्ता है। वो रिश्ता हमेशा हमेशा के लिए है और रहेगा। आई वॉन्ट टू होप एंड बिलीव that to the best of my ability and knowledge, I have been able to put across certain aspects of my meeting and relationship with this great writer and human being known to all of us as Vijay Tendulkar. As stated in the beginning, with this statement I wish to end my speech or this presentation. He was truly a great well-wisher of writers. May God bless his soul. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Imtiaz, for a very personal perspective on the person. We're really short of time, but I would like to invite Mr. Hariharan for his observations.
I'll really be very brief, but I'm so fortunate to be here as an observer because I have learned so much, and on behalf of the students here, I can tell you it has been a fabulous experience listening to all the four of you. But I must also tell you that I had a very brief association with Mr. Tendulkar also, and I come from an extremely opposite point of view, quite antithetical to this entire presentation. Is that, you see, our first meeting was when we saw Ghasiram Kotwal as students of the FTII way back in 1975, towards end of 75. And we were all spellbound by the play, and the 16 of us went to meet him and Mr. Jabbar Patel at that time and said, we would love to make a film of this play. And he was quite staggered, He says, what is this? How are you guys? And then there was, of course, among us a very great maverick called Mani Kaul, also. So it was Mani Kaul and these 15 little kids, said, we all want to make a film about this play, And then he said, sure, says, what should drive this play? He said, exactly the same visuality that we watched in the play, that should be the main driving force of the film also. And so therefore we had a very unusual request to him, and we said people usually ask writers to write. Here we asked him to chop down his dialogues, cut it down to the bare minimum, and just tell us what should be just spoken, that's all, nothing more, And so he said, okay, I don't know what you guys are talking about. So we introduced him to a filmmaker whom we were all, in awe of in 1975, and that was a Hungarian filmmaker called Miklos Jancsó. And he saw Miklos Jancsó's, roundup, and he saw his Electra, and then he also saw his Red Sound. I mean, he was dumbfounded watching these films. He says, this is completely different. It is almost like Tendulkar on screen, on a very, very different plane. And he related, he said, okay,
you guys guide me. He says, this is very, very new area for me because I have never written a human, and I've largely worked with human dramas, but this is very, very unique. You guys tell me what to do. He said, okay. So that was and it truly spoke about this man's open-mindedness, and he was willing to treat us students, we were just 25 at that time, as equals. So what we did was, this would be useful for some of you to think of how to write a script, We said we won't write this typical, Sitfield kind of 1 page a minute. But what we did was scripted the film on a scroll. We had a 90 feet scroll paper, and we said a foot is a minute in this. Because this film, we conceived it in a total of about 50 shots. The whole film would have about 50 shots, that's all. So we wrote it on a long scroll, and then we drew the picture, storyboarded as if like a landscape, like a Japanese scroll painting. And then after having finished it, we gave the scroll to him. And we said, now write it for this scroll, and write it on this scroll. He must have been thinking these guys are mad people, Anyway, so that's what then he came over to, 6 days exactly as Amol was telling, locked up in a room. Just 6 days he took, that's all. And we gave him taxi fare, that's all. We didn't have any money. The entire film was made for 1.5 lakhs of rupees. And then having finished it, he wrote all his little lines that he wanted on the script. And he said, now what are you guys going to do with this, We said, we will do one more thing, sir. To be very, very faithful to what you have written, we will pre-record the whole film. So the entire dialogues, all of them were pre-recorded. Of course, it was also for us a financial issue because we didn't have money for dubbing. So since we were playing back songs, we said, why don't we play back dialogues also to these actors? And that was fantastic. We played back dialogues to the actors on location, and then Jabbar also agreed to one more thing. He said, look, we have to get these actors out of this very, very, very strongly constructed play. We have to get them out of it and come to a little more kind of a dynamic, which is filmic drama. And so we agreed to go through a whole workshop with Badal Sarkar at that time, And there was Badal Sarkar with all the Theatre Academy actors inside our studio, and he was grooming them for another kind of a, body language experience. And all that mixed with the play, mixed with this bunch of 16, nutcases, from the FTI, wanting to do something very, very different, And we shot over weekends, and it was just fantastic, completing the film with all this great, and also, very, very important, possibly when I look back in retrospect, probably it was the situation of the emergency at that time in 1975 that probably made, Mr. Tendulkar feel this is the kind of experiments we should be doing in cinema, not just writing dialogues and not just talking about human logic, but there is a filmic logic, a cinematic logic that also to be approached, that the screenplay is not just a bunch of dialogues, but cinema, and what could transform to cinema, And then that's how we completed the film in a record meant 10 days time, 40 actors, 13 songs, 12 locations. It was absolutely mad, We completed the film. And then we had a screening. The film had probably totally 22 screenings. That's all in its life. And he saw the film at there was a preview theater in Churchgate. I don't remember the name anymore. And then he saw the film and he said, so we asked him, sir, so what do you think of the film? He said, not all films are meant for understanding. So nice of him to say that, he must have gone mad. What have they done to my Gasiram Kotwal, He was so nice, He said, well, don't worry, not all films are meant for understanding, go ahead. And that's it, the film went to the Berlin Film Festival, and then I developed a halo around my head, the next art filmmaker, and I said, no, I'm not going to be here. I left off to Chennai, And then that was my briefest meeting. So Amol began the session by thinking that he was very brief. But I had even a briefer meeting with Tendulkar. But that meeting I had was really memorable. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hariharan. All the presentations, I'm sure, must have given you one view that how open he was to the new ideas, to new suggestions, and also open to explore the medium beyond the beyond the standard practice. This is one important factor in his nature, to be open and to explore ideas and the medium. Anyway, now we have very short time and the session is open to question and answers. So please be very brief and very pointed. Yes, Ramesh.
By saying that today's modern writers are very open to bending, and we ended off by saying that Mr. Tendulkar was open to ideas. Now, is there some way that these new writers can be open and develop new avenues in their openness towards the market?
Now, there's a definite difference between being open to ideas and being very malleable and trying to please somebody else.
I accept
so that is the basic difference.
Can we take it on a higher level? That is what I'm talking about. I'm not being facetious here.
Well, does anybody want to take this question?
Yeah, that's what
Okay. Yeah. Any more?
Yeah, there's one question. This is a question more because of a curiosity in my mind, and it is a question that needs someone who has been close to him who can answer. That since he had a very unique vision, and he was a very strong individual, and his participation in his projects was very passionate. How come he didn't direct any feature film, I suppose?
I wouldn't know, at least from my knowledge. He never even mentioned that. And apart from the early plays, he never even directed his own plays. So I think he was basically a writer, and perhaps he wanted to remain there, unless you have something else to say.
He did want to direct a film, and I happened to sit with him in a session with him for 2 days at a hotel in Shivaji Park where he used to write, and various stories were debated, and I had a producer with him, and the producer stuck only for 2 days after Vijay Tendulkar talked with him, and the producer after 2 days told me that I won't risk any money on this man.
So there. Yes, next.
In the meantime,
Yeah,
Dr.
okay.
Jabbar Patel,
Yeah.
you were mentioning about the Umbertha book. We understand that he was fighting for a writer's credit, and you might have agreed to it. But are we also forgetting that the book was not originally written by him? He had only crafted a screenplay. Was the original writer's name also put on the book?
Yeah, it is there. Yes, it is there.
Because you mentioned that
Based on the novel.
Written by him but based on
Yeah,
novel.
but it's a screenplay is a screenplay's writer work. Base can be anything.
Thank you.
There is
Next.
if I may just point out a very interesting aspect of this. If you read the preface written by Mr. Tendulkar for the script that he wrote for the film Sardar, biographical film on Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, I am not quoting him exactly, but it is something on these lines where he says that most of the times when we read the screenplays of a film, what one reads is ultimately what is the final picture on celluloid. So it is not actually a screenplay, because screenplay is something different, and what ultimately happens is something different.
He said, no.
And he has made very pertinent points, and he has a position, and in which he says that here is a script which you will read, which is quite different than the film that was made. And I think if one can see that and one can read that, one can get lot more insights into all these layers of collective creative process that is filmmaking, but also where the writer comes and what is the script, and then how it transforms into a celluloid, etc., etc. So all these aspects. So where one says that a film by so and so and written by so and so, and what are the layers, and what apart from the credit and acknowledgements, what is really the contribution, etc., etc. All this will also make a very interesting reading to a film buff. Please do read that.
Just a minute. I think you want to add a minute?
I think here one aspect of Tendulkar, because we are all writers here, was very important to see others work and appreciate. I remember Kamal, that the great appreciation in his essays, he wrote about 2 films. I remember Zorba the Greek and Sagina Mahato of Mr. Dilip Kumar. Very extensive writing and appreciation of these 2 films. It's a unique aesthetics of how a cinema can be appreciated. I remember the last days of his, when the Pune International Film Festival was on, he was with his all tubes around in the hospital. I just asked him, he used to write only, because he couldn't speak. He said, get me some films you have. I'm getting bored in the bed. And I had some DVDs which came for selection in some of the competition. And I thought one film was very good, which was a great hope. It was a Polish film which won the award in Venice Film Festival called The Tricks. And I gave him, he had the laptop. And the headphone, he just saw the film and immediately SMS'd me. And I tell you, it was something great. With all those tubes, and he knew that he's just sinking and sinking. He writes 3 lines. Jabbar, thank you. You made my life today. This film by this young man, this filmmaker, Polish filmmaker, was just 25. I gave him all the brief and everything. He said, this young man made such a brilliant film. It made my life today, Jabbar. Thank you. That's all.
Sir.
Last question, please.
Sir, I have a question.
Amol?
Sir,
Yeah.
you all said he had an ego, but sir, Vijay Tendulkar was forthright, sir. Sir, 1 minute. So how could he project that angle with that emotions and stirring? So how could he show that sensibility, that disharmony in the relationships? Could you please explain?
I would only say that it's very difficult for me or anybody to describe his inner process, how he could express. But the fact is, we have to go by the work that he produced, and we know that this is what he did. He found a way of expressing his anger, his angst, through his screenplay, mostly, as I said, through his characters. But that inner process that happened within his mind, unfortunately, I won't be able to say anything about that.
पूछना चाहते हो, हम सब ने अर्ध सत्य का वो एंड देखा है जो आप चाहते थे. क्या आप बता सकते हैं कि तेंदुलकर साहब क्या चाहते थे?
I think I wouldn't like to go into that because I think let's not get into that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Amol, yes, please.
While discussing Tendulkar Saab, one thing comes to my mind again and again, that is this the Indian writer gets his due after death?
No, he gets his due even during his
No, I don't think you should think that way. It's not because he is not with us and therefore we are praising him. It's not that. We are being very, very objective, and all of our comments are based on our interaction with him.
But how can we develop the day-to-day living? The writers are making... writers are writing for the living.
So
yes.
that's a subject we'll be debating it when we come to copyright.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's another subject.
Okay.
That we'll be debating it.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Amol.
No, this is not a question. Just as an observer, I would just try to piece together the views of the illustrious panel sitting in front of us, and what seems to be skirting the big O is that Mr. Vijay Tendulkar is a Renaissance man, and it goes beyond the purview of whether he was a writer or a backseat director or an instructor on paper, or whether he wrote on transcripts or in those scrolls. What really matters is you have to inspect him for his mind and what he has given the Indian arts as a Renaissance man. Somewhere that thing needs to be put on register, which I thought was missing in this continuous discussion.
Yeah. Thank you, Amol. Good observation. And with this, I think we will wind up this session and get on to the next one, which is a very exciting session again, on if there is anything like a unique Indian script writing.